business analyst. So the first thing which you need to understand as a business analyst, you are trying to understand what is the customer trying to achieve through their requirements, through their needs, right? So if a software is getting developed, it's not about just the development of the software. The real reason behind that software development has to be well understood. So your understanding of these needs starts with maybe a business requirements document or a needs analysis document or a business case document which the customer teams have prepared and must have shared with your, because that is something which is the end result. For example, if there is a company which is selling uh, some kind of beauty products across the country, and they are realizing that in the central region of the country, like if you talk about India, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, the sales are going down instead of going up. All the other regions are going up, right? But they realize that by the time they have understood it, it's already quite late. It has really gone down quite a bit. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to first figure out how do we improve it. So they discussed the entire problem and came up with an idea that okay, we need to monitor the sales on a regular basis. We need to monitor how the salespeople are performing in that region. Individuals, groups, whether it is selling it to a company or selling it to an individual or to a store, all of that is the primary reason why the software is going to be developed. So your document analysis starts with understanding why is something being built. And then documents can also be studied for various other reasons. For example, if you are trying to improve a process, what is the current process? You need to study that. Then only you will realize what are the changes which are required to improve the process. Process improvements can be a massive exercise, but unless you know what is the current process, what are the issues with the process, you will not be able to define the change strategy to improve. So you need to study the current document. Similarly, there are issues with the implementations in terms of what kind of servers the company has, what kind of infrastructure you have. Are you going to put it into their own data center, or it is going to be in a hosted environment? That will also affect how the solution is going to be implemented. All of these things can come with the existing documentations which might have been done by the previous team or by the organization themselves. Okay, so there are various aspects where you actually look at a document and do a lot of activities related to a project. So that is what is an important technique which is invariably used in every project, no matter what kind of a project you're doing. So the key here is to understand how to quickly look at a documentation and understand the key aspects of it. Okay, so this comes with experience. Initially, you may face a bit of a challenge in terms of reading a document, uh, understanding it. But as you start doing more and more projects, this is especially for new BAs, you'll start understanding the language, the tone, and the structure of the documentation. So it will become easier for you to understand things from a document. In the initial period, you may have to put in more effort into that. The next two techniques are basically an extension to, you can say, to an extent, to document analysis. Let's say you get some idea about why the project is being done, what are the reasons. Then you need to go ahead and get the requirements. Now, getting a requirement sounds like a very simple exercise, but actually, people who are already working, they will be able to tell you that requirements are never so easy to get from the customer. So, if you look at the term which is used for requirements gathering, it's called elicitation. Now, why it is called elicitation? If you look at the definition of elicitation, it says extraction, discovery. These are the terms which are used to define elicitation. It's a discovery of requirements. Requirements are never given to you on a plate because the way business understands requirements versus the way you and your team needs to understand, you need to understand the requirements is very different. For example, let's take a very simple example. Customer says, we would only like the authorized users to access the system, which is a business requirement. Customer is saying, we only want people who are authorized to access the system or log in into this. Now, when you look at it from a business requirement perspective, it is very straightforward. But when you look at it from a software perspective, you need to start thinking, how will that access be provided? Starting from there. Will they register themselves or the company will provide them the user ID and password? How will they get access to the system? Will it be user ID and password? Will it be mobile number and OTP? Or will it be through a security device? What could be the ways to allow authorized access to the system? So you can see that from the business requirement to getting to the root of the solution or the software requirements is an exercise. And that exercise involves defining requirements as you are understanding from the customer, which are sometimes known as high level requirements. Something which is defined at a high level. Then when you start creating the process diagrams and screen designs, then it becomes more detailed level requirement. That is how the requirements are elicited, analyzed, and documented. Two of the techniques which are used at a, or rather used to capture the high level requirement are called use cases. And the next one which we are going to discuss, user story. These are the two of the most used early stage requirements capturing techniques. Everything else which used to be uh, practiced in the past is now almost eliminated. We are primarily using user stories because more and more projects are getting done in agile environment and to some extent use case. Okay. So before we proceed, let me ask you, how many of you are aware of use cases? Can somebody give me their understanding of what is a use case? Whatever you understand. Either you can type in the chat window or you can unmute yourself and speak.
Uh, Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can
So
hear you.
use case, yeah, as per my understanding, use case can be like the way in which the process of the system with respect to end user would look like and would work like. and how many instances. Suppose if I take an example of a web page, then what would be the customer journey from start to end? What happens if we click on this and it will go to the text page, or will be going to the back page, or doing some interaction with the button? So all the use cases with this with respect to the product can be, I mean, all the tasks with respect to the product can be a part of a use case.
Okay.
If
Okay. Fair
I'm
enough. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned some important points. Let me hear from others also. Dilip is saying
Yep.
how an actor, user or actor going to interact with the system or software. Okay, that's correct.
Hi.
Yes.
Basically, I
Right.
think that use cases is like based on the requirement. We
Mhm.
will create a workflow. A flow will be created, like how the user will take that is going to test that requirement, or like how they are going to perform that in this system.
Okay. Okay. The interaction between the system and the actor. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, you people have talked about how somebody uses a system. That's the crux of the statement which has come up, which is absolutely correct. So, use cases basically define at a broad level. Yeah, like just now somebody mentioned Vikas, bird's eye view of how the process works. So it's a bird eye view, meaning it's kind of seeing something from a distance. Okay. So it basically a way to say these are the people who are going to interact with the system. When I say people, it's role, not people. These are the roles which are going to interact with the system. And while they're interacting, they will be doing certain actions. So those actions are called use cases. These roles are called actors. So actors perform actions, and that is how you define a system. So please understand that at this stage, when you have started discussion with the customer, you have absolutely no idea what kind of a website is going to be created, how the processes will be carried out in the system. You have no idea because right now you are at an early stage. So it's important to avoid thinking about a software at this stage. It's basically saying I'm not sure whether all these actors and their defined actions will even be part of the system or not. Because customer is telling me these are the things which are done and these are the roles which are going to perform it. But is it possible that some of these actions will be done offline and some of them will be done in the system? But that can be determined as we start identifying these actors and actors. So it's very, very important that at this stage, we don't think about software at all. So let me tell you about some elements of the use cases. I've already talked about actor and use cases. So an actor is not somebody who is part of this system. Actor is always somebody who is a user of the system. So user meaning somebody who is accessing it from the outside world. So actor could be humans, actors could be machines, actors could be many other items. But as long as they are external entities, there can be actors. So, for example, in a particular system, cashier can be an actor who can perform various tasks like generating bill. That's a simple thing which cashiers can do. A customer is an actor who can buy items. So when you're creating a use case diagram, there are just three things. There's an actor, there's a use case, and there is an association which links an actor to a use case. Please note this word here, buy. It starts with a verb because it is supposed to be an action. Action always starts with a verb. So that's a convention also. You may call it as a convention that we start with a. So this is one particular use case in a system, but a system may comprise of multiple use cases, right? One actor can do 10 tasks, another actor can do 5 tasks, and so and so. So a system typically will comprise of multiple features and multiple action items. For example, you go to a retail mall to buy, let's say, groceries or confectionery items, right? So once you pick up all the items, you go to the cash counter, which is called point of sale term. Now think of this system and think of the actors here. Just tell me who are going to be the actors here. Okay, customer and cashier, end user. Okay, all right. So I've got some answers. Let me explain you a part of the point of sale term. So there's a cashier who will have who will log in into the system, generate bill, and somebody will buy an item. That somebody is actually going to be the customer. Okay. So these oval shaped items are called use cases, which represent an action in the system. Actor is like a human like interface. And then there is a boundary. This boundary tells you that whatever is inside this boundary is part of this system, and this is going to be developed in the software. So this kind of works also as a scope. At this point in time, you can finalize out of these 10 things which customer has told you. Two of them are part of this system overall, but they are going to be offline. For example, customer paying in cash. The customer counts the cash, notes, give it to the cashier. In this entire interaction, there is nothing being done on the software, isn't it? So that is part of this overall process of somebody buying stuff at the mall, but that is not part of the software. This is a normal scenario in every project. When you're discussing it with the customer, you'll always have this scenario. Some of them will be described by the customer as part of the entire system, which is normal. For them, everything is part of the system. But as a software team member, you have to now segregate which are part of the software, which are not going to be part. Once you identify that, then this use case model works as a very handy, ready-made scope work or scope document. You just look at it and you will come to know which are the features which are going to be part of it. So this forms the basis for all the next set of activities which are going to perform. For example, creating process diagram, creating prototypes later, All of that will be based on this, or even creating data model. All of that will be part of this. So what was missing here? Customer as an actor. In this case, there could be many other use cases, but an important missing point was customer, because that is how the interactions at the point of sale terminal happen. So similar to use cases is user stories. They're also a technique to capture requirements at a high level. Exactly similar kind of uh, technique, but the difference is that this is a visual model. Sorry, this is a textual model compared to use cases, which is a visual one. The use cases have actors, use cases, and the association. User stories are textual. Okay. So two of the things which we use there, the actor and their action, are also used in user stories, but in a textual. But there's one very important thing which is also added to user stories. I'll come to that. But there's no standard format specified by somebody. Like UML is a specification document. There is a standard which is created by a body called OMG, Object Management Group. They manage the standards of UML. So currently 2.5, I guess, is the specification which is live, but it may change. They keep on working on it. But user stories is like a more practice based. So there are certain formats which are being used. I'll tell you one of them. This is quite widely used. It says as a user role. You can see the role is coming here again. I want to do something which is an action. The additional thing is called why. Why the user wants to do this action in the software. I want to log into the system to check my bank balance or account balance now. I want to log into the system to buy an insurance policy for my vehicle. That why is very, very important. So user stories allow you to capture this why also. And that makes it very, very powerful technique to capture it. Another example, as a user, I want to search for flight tickets so that I can find the right flight for going for a business conference. Okay. So in agile world, user stories have become kind of a de facto standard to capture high level requirements. Okay. Now this why, I just want to give you a perspective as to why this why so relevant. Okay. If you look at this example, it says that there is a user or there is a kind of a person who comes to the website or flight booking portal to search for tickets for attending a business conference, which means that this kind of a person is basically a business traveler or a frequent traveler. But if we can identify correctly, we can also identify a role where people can come to search for flight or flight tickets to go on a holiday trip. These are two different reasons for using the same portal. And how is that relevant? That is relevant because as a business, meaning the portal business, can then offer them different kinds of schemes based on what kind of a people, what kind of a profile this person has. So as a frequent traveler, I can give the frequent flyer program or some kind of a loyalty point program where they can accumulate points. And then they can come frequently to your website. If it's a holiday trip maker, I can offer them something which will attract them to book the tickets. Maybe some additional discount if they book for 3 members, 4 members, something like that, which can be used by the business to to allow them to make the purchase on their web. So user stories, because of these reasons, by really able to specify this, it becoming very, very popular. There's one more thing which is used, maybe in some other session we'll discuss that, called persona. That is also being used quite a bit in Agile. So uh, there could be various ways in which we can write user stories. This format which I showed to you is something which is used quite a bit and easier to write. Okay. Now let's look at a small case. Uh, it's basically an e-commerce website for selling components for vehicles. Okay, so these are basically ancillaries for whether it's a car or it's a way, or it's a bike or anything. They want to sell parts to people who can buy them by themselves and get it fixed from someone. Okay, so it's a typical e-commerce website where you can have stories like this. As a customer, I want to place an order so that I can get the required components for my bike. Now, here again, the customers can be of various categories. So one way is to just define one customer. Other one is to use the persona to define them in different ways. Whether I'm a bike rider, I'm a dealer. Dealers can also buy from here. Or I am a service center who can buy in bulk. Or I can be an individual customer who can buy one piece at a time. Using that information, the business can launch various kinds of schemes to offer to the customer. Okay, so that is the user story part. The next related technique is backlog management, which is again agile term. It's also called backlog refinement. Sometimes it's called backlog management. Sometimes it's called backlog refinement. Essentially, backlog is a document which is nothing but a to-do list. It's like in the morning. Sometimes you might be using some kind of things. Okay, I have to do today this. Or if you're going on a holiday, you make a list that okay, I have to take this, I have to take this, and you as you start completing that task, you put a tick mark. You know, okay, this item number one is done, two is done, three is done, something like that. Backlog actually originated from this is called backlog. Something which is not yet done. That's why it's called backlog. Okay, so it's a to-do list. So in Agile, that is how things started because Agile was initially practiced.
This conference will now be recorded. Muted.
Just by maintaining a to-do list, it's not going to work. So we have started to use tools like Jira, which is the best or the top tool which is used across the industry for managing back and also for planning and all. Okay. So backlog document essentially was a list of requirements. As you can see here, it's an Excel snapshot with the priority as to which requirements will be done first, which requirements will be done next, and the estimation. But as I mentioned, this is not good enough in today's world to carry on a project. So what we do in Jira, there's a provision of adding more details to it. So there is something called user story cards. I'm not sure whether you are aware of it, but user story card extends the details of every user story. So that is attached to the Jira user story. Okay. So that is how the scope of backlog has expanded. So that is a backlog. So what is backlog management or refined? You have to understand two things. First of all, just like any list, there could be changes. So there is a uh, requirement saying resetting of past. Okay. So today the resetting happens through email ID. So somebody enters the email ID and the email is sent to the user with a password reset link. But it's possible that the resetting can also happen by using a mobile number. You send an OTP and then the OTP is entered on the screen and then the password change option comes. You don't need to go to your mailbox, which means the requirements keep on getting modified as well. So the basic management task is to keep your requirements updated. That's a basic thing, which is required. So whether something is being added, added, something is being deleted, deleted, something is being modified or updated, that's a basic now. But backlog management has also come in another context. So some of you might be aware of how the Scrum and Agile projects work. So there are small sprints which are carried out. So sprint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sprints are generally 1 to 4 weeks, right? Now in Agile, unlike waterfall, not all requirements are detailed out in the beginning. You delay it as the project progresses. So for example, let's say there are 20 requirements in the project. Two of them are high priority, so you have taken up and modified and updated, I mean not modified, expanded it, detailed out prototypes, everything is done, and then the sprint starts. Now, as you're working for sprint 1, you need to also make sure that the requirements which are to be taken up for sprint 2 or sprint 3 should also be in a final form of sprint 1 to 2. Will you do this requirements extension or requirements expansion when the sprint 1 is over and people are waiting for sprint 2? That will be really bad in terms of plan. What happens is in the back end or background, the product owner or whosoever is responsible, PAs, they keep on talking to the customer and keep on working on the requirement. So that once the sprint 1 ends, logically, sprint 2 also starts immediately without too much of it. And so on. The cycle goes on. The backlog refinement also includes working on the requirements, expanding it, and then updating the backlog. So that is the backlog management. Next one is process modeling. So I'm sure you must have heard about process modeling. Can anyone tell me what is process modeling and why is it used? Anyone? Or can someone give you an example of what technique we use to create process models? Okay, I've got one answer. Process modeling is a pictorial representation of a process. Absolutely correct. So it's a simple technique. Anyone is aware of what kind of techniques are used to create process diagram? Correct. Flow diagram or flow charts. This is the most basic one which is used, and most of us are typically either we have seen it before or we are aware of. Data flow diagram, yes, that is also correct. Not used in today's world, but yes, data flow diagram was also used